Time to wake up.
Wake up! Wake up, wake up, wake up! Up you wake, up you wake, up you wake, up you wake! Wake
Time to wake up.
Hello everybody, how are you doing? Hello children, how art thou? How's everyone doing tonight? Thank you for tuning in to the Wake Up Show, yeah? I'm Brother Isaac A. Fingers. And I'm speaking like this because I just feel like it, right? Yeah. I do that occasionally, but I'm going to get back to myself. Welcome to the Wake Up Show. Thank y'all for tuning in. Sorry about this morning. As we all know, Facebook had some issues going on and nobody could either post or go live or whatever was going on. So, and maybe it was the Lord. That's all I can say. Maybe it was the Lord saying, hey, you need to do this at night when families are together. That's my logic on the whole situation. So, like, share the video, start watch parties. Thank you guys for tuning in. This lesson is called Thanksgiving. Who are we really thanking? Now, before we get started with it, let me go ahead and get this intro stuff out the way before we get into this, all right? Let's go to Isaiah 28. We're going to start reading at verse 9. Now, this is what I always read when I open up my show for beginners, to get an understanding of who the Lord's priest is, what the priest is supposed to do for the Lord, and how to obtain salvation. Isaiah 28 verse 9, who shall he teach knowledge, and whom shall he make understand doctrine? Them that are weaned from the milk and drawn from the breast, he is the Lord. Who is he trying to make understand his doctrine? His priests. In Exodus 19, he said, you shall be a kingdom of priests to me. He didn't say this to anybody else. He said this to Israel. And they're supposed to go out and teach the rest of the world how to obtain salvation. This is the plan of God. Verse 10, for precept must be upon precept, precept on precept, line upon line, line upon line, here a little and there a little. So, again, you could read this book from the beginning to the end, but there are so many things that the Lord is trying to convey to us to teach to the rest of the world that you must go line on line, precept on precept, here a little and there a little. All right? Don't let anybody tell you you got to read the book from the beginning to the end and you'll understand. You ain't going to understand everything. And then remember, for those that do know, the Lord coming back to teach us for the next 3.5 years once he comes back. All right, let's keep going. Verse 11. For with stammering lips and another tongue will he speak to this people. So he's going to teach Israel his knowledge, here a little, there a little, precept on precept, in other languages. He said with this people, he gonna speak to them with stammering lips and another tongue. Now, the next verse keeps going on talking about, but they still not going to hear. But he's telling us, I'm going to speak to y'all in different tongues because y'all going to be around the whole world as slaves, but I'm not going to leave you. I'm going to still be a sanctuary to you, but whatever language you learn, that's how I'm going to communicate to you. Let's go to Isaiah 8. Isaiah 8, and when he does this to his priests that have the answers, that understand the doctrine and the answers, how are they supposed to teach? Isaiah 8 verse 20, to the law and to the testimony, if they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. So if they're only using the Old Testament and that's it, there's no light in them. If they're only using the New Testament and that's it, there's no light in them. You must teach from Genesis to Revelation, the entire thing, the law and the testimony. That's what the book says. Let's go to Revelation 14 and see who did these things. These 3 verses kind of really sum up a lot of stuff, especially this last verse. Revelation 14, and we're going to start reading in verse 12. Here's the patience of the saints. Now, everybody want to be a saint. Everybody want to go marching in when you know, and when the saints go marching in, everybody want to be in that number, right? Well, how are you going to be in that number unless you do this? Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. So you have to keep the law and the testimony, the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Not the commandments of men and the false doctrine put out here, twisting of scriptures of Paul. Paul followed exactly what Jesus was talking about, but the commandments of men have twisted the scriptures, not the scriptures, the testimony of Paul, and made it a doctrine. This verse right here kills everything that anybody ever wants to talk about with the law being done away with or no testimony of Christ. That's why I love it so much. Now, let's get into this lesson. Thanksgiving. Who are we really thanking? Now, a lot of people like to jump on me when I talk about this every year because they think I'm, they think I'm being over righteous. I'm being holier than thou. What's the other one? Holier than thou, over righteous, and I can't think of the other one, but I get called a lot of names when I get to this lesson every year, and I've learned to just take it, you know. People gonna think what they want to think, but let me make something clear before we start this whole thing. This holiday is serving another God, all right, and a goddess, and we're gonna get into that. But the thing is, if you choose to be with your family, I totally don't see nothing wrong with that. All right? If you're really trying to go, if your mission when it comes to any of these holidays is to try to draw people from it, I don't see nothing wrong with that. But if you're going in there to participate in the activities, the food and all of that stuff, and not even attempt to draw someone, then you're being a part of the rest of the world. That's what I'm saying. I know there's people that go, they're sitting there now with their family members. Are you trying to show them what we're doing? The Lord really doesn't like it the way we're doing it. And how are we doing it? If we're saying happy Thanksgiving, that's giving homage to a goddess. if you're just getting together because it's family and you don't have any other time of the year, which I still feel we can make time for the rest of the year. Everybody does it in the summertime when family reunions come up. Don't let somebody say I'm barbecuing. Everybody coming over. You know what I'm saying? But when it comes to these holidays that serve other gods, that's what I teach about. I teach about how it's serving another god. Not it's pagan. That's another thing I always like to tell everyone, that the word pagan came from the Catholic Church. We got to remember this. The word pagan came from the Catholic Church. So whoever didn't do what the Catholic Church did, they were considered pagans. So that's right, Israelites, or the original Christians, you were considered a pagan at one point. Then we absorbed the Catholic Church ways. Then we parted and still kept some of their ways. And then we started calling everybody else pagan. This is why I don't call these holidays pagan anymore. And another reason why I don't call them pagan is because, look, there's things pagans did that did not upset God. Pagans got married, right? So does that mean we shouldn't get married no more? And I ain't trying to give no Hebrews some ideas. I'm just saying. So with all that being said, let's go ahead. Come on, baby. Trying to get it to turn around. There we go. All right. With all that being said, let's start this show with a video. All right. We're about to look at how we were taught about Thanksgiving, but really wasn't taught a whole lot about Thanksgiving. We were basically told that the Pilgrims got off the Mayflower, and I can't remember the other ships, but they got off the Mayflower, stepped on Plymouth Rock, and they met the Indians, and everything was cool, and they had a feast together, and that was it. That's all we were taught. So let's watch. I got 2 videos with all of this stuff that I didn't get to play last Sabbath, but let's watch this video and get an understanding of what was really going on at that time. All right? And I want people to just take a good look at that cup. Remember that cup. All right, here we go.
Changing color. Pumpkin spice lattes are back, and Charlie Brown is playing on TV. That must mean it's time for Thanksgiving, with family, friends, and loads of turkey. Even if you're not an American, you've probably heard of the holiday, but the image of pacifist settlers singing Kumbaya alongside the natives is all wrong. The story begins on a cold pier in England in August of 1620, when 120 men, women, and children stepped onto 2 English merchant ships in Southampton Harbor bound for the Americas. Both vessels seemed to be held together by spit and prayers. The Speedwell was so old it had fought against the Spanish Armada in 1588, and the Mayflower was such an ungainly transport ship that it could barely sail into the wind. And since the North Atlantic in the fall and winter is nothing but westerly winds, it was the absolute worst ship to try and attempt a crossing with. But somehow the Mayflower had made it to the Americas twice before, even if it had taken twice as long as normal. Luckily, these would-be colonists were determined. They had to be. They were Brownists, religious dissenters from the Anglican Church of England. You see, the Brownist beliefs were relatively simple. The first, that only the word of the Holy Bible was infallible. The second, that individual churches and their local communities should have more say and autonomy in the goings-on of the church. Both these beliefs were aimed at jettisoning the corrupt power structure of the old Catholicism. That didn't happen. As the new church started looking more Catholic by the day, the Brownists bought themselves a printing press and began passing out leaflets to oppose it, which led to the Brownists becoming intimately familiar with the inside of London's prison system. They got such a bad rap that Shakespeare even mentions them in one of his plays, Twelfth Night, where he says, "I had as gladly be a Brownist as a politician." Not exactly a flattering comparison. So the Pilgrims decided to risk it all as a startup colony in the Americas, creaky boat and all. It would be an English colony, but one not bound by religious politics. So they set sail and braved the rough fall seas in August of 1620. They hadn't even made it out of the port, though, before they found that the Speedwell was taking on water, so they pulled over at Dartmouth for repairs. Undaunted, they shored the leaking boards and set out again, to a new life, and watched with glee as Land's End in Cornwall slipped away behind them, only to turn around and immediately see it again. The Speedwell had recently been refitted with a larger mast, and somebody had clearly botched the job. The ship was going nowhere, so 20 people agreed to stay behind and bring more of their congregation with them the next year, and 102 crammed onto the already overloaded Mayflower, finally leaving again on the 6th of September. Or maybe it was the 16th, no one's actually sure, the calendars in that period are a bit wonky. Their trip was mercifully dull after recent events, but halfway across the ocean, the Pilgrims' good luck set back in again. A storm and strong winds hit. In the middle of the storm, a deep snap echoed through the ship. A main beam had cracked. So they pulled a spare from the hold and tried to reinforce it, but the buckling was so severe that it wouldn't stay in place. That meant it was time to turn around and go back to England. Again. The delays had already exhausted all the Pilgrims' money, and for them, that wasn't an option. So they decided to try something else first. They had brought a great iron screw with them as cargo, likely a piece of the exact printing press that had gotten them kicked out of England in the first place, and used that to raise the new beam into place. Somehow, it held long enough to get them across the Atlantic. They sighted land on 9th November, just off Cape Cod, then turned south for the Hudson River Valley, hoping to move closer to established colonies and warm weather. But hard winter currents forced them back to Massachusetts, where they set up anchor in the natural harbor of Pucktown. But this new land had been dodgy at best, the settlers agreed to draw up a new contract for their colony, styling it the Mayflower Compact. It organized them as a civil body politic created for the general good of the colony, where issues would be decided by vote. This set of rules and beliefs set down by the Pilgrims has since been called the world's first written constitution. The men of the ship put their names to paper, and they all signed the agreement together. And within weeks, they would all begin dying together. Scurvy and illness took hold of the boat, and as the first snows arrived, it turned the ship into an icy tomb. Exploration parties were sent out to find a suitable place to build, and any man who could still stand was put aboard with swords, armor, and matchlocks. They found a deserted landscape and found themselves strangers in an unknown land, filled with native burials and abandoned villages. But everywhere they went, eyes watched them. Going as far as they could each day, they camped on the shores, and in the dim morning, they draped their jackets over a barricade to dry, and made to move their boats back into the water. And that's when the arrows began to rain down on them. Grabbing muskets, they fired blindly into the forest. Their leader appeared from behind a tree and fired 3 arrows directly at the Pilgrims. The man gave a triumphant cry and then disappeared again into the forest. The Pilgrims searched the area, but found no bodies. Only 18 arrows, tipped with deer horn, brass, and eagle's claws. When they went to retrieve their jackets, they found them riddled with arrow holes. Guessing that as many as 30 or 40 men waited for them in the forest, the Pilgrims left before they could return. The next day, they found the building place they were looking for, well suited to winter construction, already cleared of timber, with tall hills for defensive positions. But it was also full of dead bodies. Patuxet had been a village of the Wampanoag people, until it had been wiped out by an outbreak of Indian fever 3 years earlier. The epidemic was bad enough that the colonists found unburied skeletons still inside their homes. But with more settlers dying by the second, the Pilgrims were in no shape to be picky. They moved the Mayflower to join them and began construction. The first common house that was finished became a hospital for the ill, and the 19 families then each built their own town, huddled together for defense, and by February, the settlement was complete. But without food or proper shelter, they continued to die off one by one by one. And by the time the snows thawed, only 47 of the original 102 Pilgrims were still alive, and half of the Mayflower crew had died as well. Those that survived now faced the danger of summer raiding parties, so they decided to fortify the village, bringing cannons from the ship to point outwards into the unknown wilds. Finally free of the bitter cold, they planted corn taken from the abandoned graves and storehouses of the old Wampanoag village. And with that first thaw came their first contact with the locals. A man, tall and dark-skinned, boldly strode out of the forest and made to walk directly into the center of their town. The pilgrims stopped him, guns pointed. Then he opened his mouth and greeted them in English, welcoming them to the new land, and then promptly asked for a beer to drink. He was Samoset of the eastern Abenaki, who'd spent years trading naval supplies with English and who knew the area. And as he swapped stories over his acquired taste for English delicacies, he warned that not every tribe would be as friendly as his, but they could get little more out of him as his English was broken at best. The next week, Samoset returned with a new man, Tisquantum, known today as Squanto, who spoke fluent English. He was the last survivor of the Patuxet tribe, the very land the pilgrims now inhabited, who had been taken by slavers as a boy and had lived in Spain and England before escaping back home again, only to find his own people had been wiped out by disease. He had been taken captive, a useful tool to deal with the continuing English encroachment. Squanto heralded the arrival of 60 armed warriors and their chief, the Wampanoag. The pilgrims grabbed their muskets and ran to the walls and waited for the worst. But neither side wanted to make the first move. With a bit of back and forth from Squanto, their chief, Massasoit, agreed to sit down with the pilgrims' governor, and after a healthy amount of liquor to loosen up both sides, they set about with the business of peace. See, the Wampanoag found themselves beset on all sides by enemy tribes, with plenty of land, but no power to hold them back. Where others saw the English settlers as a threat, Massasoit saw an opportunity. The pilgrims agreed to help the chief against his enemies by using their muskets and cannons, in return for mutual protection, and some much-needed agricultural advice from Squanto, specifically how to plant the native foods that the pilgrims had never before encountered. And so began an unlikely friendship, where Squanto passed on his knowledge of the land. Under his tutelage, the pilgrims learned how to plant corn, bean, and squash in a way that ensured that each would thrive. When they weren't planting, they sent diplomatic parties out to every tribe in a 50-mile radius to agree to mutual peace, and took time to knock the heads of anyone who threatened their native allies. So by the time the fall came and the harvest ready to be brought in, they found themselves looking quite optimistically to the new year, especially in comparison to the last. It was in this spirit that the men were sent into the forest to shoot a few game birds, likely turkeys and waterfowl, for a feast to give thanks to the Lord for their bounty and good luck. Massasoit joined them with 90 of his people and brought along 5 deer for the occasion. Add to that a few eels, some fish, crabs, and a lobster or two, and of course their freshly harvested corns, beans, and squash, and you got yourself the first Thanksgiving dinner. It was a celebration that lasted for 3 days, a harvest festival with sport, games, and friends, like so many others around the world. Days of Thanksgiving, thankful that there will be enough food to eat, and another year survived. Sure, the new land wasn't perfect. It wasn't harmony between man and beast, or a permanent peace between settler and native. But for a time, people set aside their differences and gave their thanks for a chance at life. And many other harvest festivals appear around the world today for just the same thing. And that's the story of the first Thanksgiving.
Many other Hold on. So that's the first Thanksgiving is what we were told. Not that much detail, but that's what we were told in our Americanized schools. All right? So that actually set the tone of us believing that Thanksgiving only started here in America. It wasn't even called Thanksgiving at that time. Later on, the word Thanksgiving was given to the festival, but we'll get into that. We'll give into it's a harvest festival, but we'll get into that. But before I get into it, I must read from Ezekiel 3. Ezekiel 33. Let's go ahead to Ezekiel 33 because again, Thanksgiving is deeper than what we have been told. From what we've been taught, it's way deeper than that. All right, so let's go to Ezekiel 33 and let's start at verse 1. Again, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, speak unto the children of thy people, and say unto them, when I bring the sword upon the land, if the people of the land take a man of their coast, and set him on for their watchman, if he, when he seeth the sword come upon the land, he blow the trumpet and warn the people, then whosoever heareth the sound of the trumpet and taketh not the warning, if the sword come and take him away, his blood shall be upon his own head. So you got a person that's like this guy up on the mountain. He sees danger coming and he's blowing the trumpet. He's trying to let people know, hey, death and destruction is coming. And if nobody listens, then whatever happens to that person, it's on them. Let's keep reading verse 5. He heard the sound of the trumpet and took not the warning. His blood shall be upon him, but he that taketh the warning shall deliver his soul. Now I said before, there was times in the building that I live in years ago where the kids would play with the fire alarm. And they played with it so, not my kids, because my kids would have got fire put to them. But kids was playing with the fire alarm, and they did it so many times that it turned into, every time we heard it, ain't nobody going outside now. Now, what if there was a fire? Our blood would have been on our own head. Verse 6, but if the watchman see the sword come and blow not the trumpet, and the people be not warned, and if the sword come and take any person from among them, he is taken away in his iniquity, but his blood I will require of the watchman's hand. So the Lord is going to be upset with the person who saw the danger coming and didn't say nothing about it. Verse 7, so thou, O son of man, I have set thee a watchman unto the house of Israel. Therefore thou shalt hear the word at my mouth and warn them from me. So what is the watchman doing? He's warning the people from the Lord. Again, it says, and warn them from me. So the Lord is the one that's giving the warning, and he's telling his watchmen, tell them people this. And he gave his watchmen this book and understanding. Verse 8. When I say unto the wicked, O wicked man, thou shalt surely die, if thou dost not speak and warn the wicked from his way, that the wicked man shall die in his iniquity. But his blood I will require at thine hand. Nevertheless, if thou warn the wicked of his way to turn from it, if he do not turn from his way, he shall die in his iniquity, but thou hast delivered thy soul. And that's what a lot of us brothers are trying to do. Warn the people of the Lord of what he does not like and what he does like. How do you obtain salvation? Keep these commandments. Verse 10. Therefore, O son of man, speak unto the house of Israel, thus speaking, saying, if our transgressions and our sins be upon us, and we pine away in them, how should we live? How should we then live? Say unto them, as I live. Let's take a real good close look at verse 11. Say unto them, as I live, saith the Lord God, I have no pleasure in the death of the wicked. So Christ or the Father, either one, both of them in the Godhead, they don't have no pleasure in the dead, in the wicked dying. So that's why he's sending the watchmen to warn the wicked. This does not mean that the watchman is perfect. None of us, we all come short. But if there's something that the watchman see and he doesn't warn, that's on him. For those that want to always say, man, why are you so concerned about this? It's because I've said it before and I'll say it again. Thanksgiving has been the most clever, forgot the word, camouflaged holiday, I think, of all of them. I have no pleasure in the death of the wicked, but that the wicked turn from his way and live. Turn ye from your evil ways, for why will ye die, O house of Israel? So that's what the watchman's duty is. And there's so many people that call themselves watchmen that always want to go against the other watchmen for doing their duty, which makes me wonder, are they even watchmen at all? There are so many brothers that I have witnessed over the last couple of days talking about those who try to warn people about holidays. And to me, it's like, okay, I see you warning people about Christmas and Easter. But when it comes to Thanksgiving, you want people like myself to shut up. But I ain't going to get personal with this. I'm just telling you what the watchman's duty is. I'm trying to cover my own blood. I'm trying to cover myself. And I'm trying to help warn the people so they can also cover and come out of her like the Lord told us. Because there's a lot of things that we have been raised on where we don't even see that it's going against the commandments of God. Now again, getting together, family, nothing wrong with that. But what's the name you're doing this in? There's only 2 tables. What's the name are you doing this in? So let's get to going. The watchman has spoken. So now he's going to use Exodus 20 to warn the people. Here we go. Exodus 20 verse 1. And God spoke all these words saying, now remember, God is the head of this church that started in the wilderness. It didn't start in Jerusalem in Acts 2. It started in the wilderness right here in Genesis, to be honest with you. No, I'm sorry, Exodus. I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. This is the first and greatest commandment that Christ was speaking about in Matthew 22. When they asked him, what is the greatest commandment in the law? What did Christ say first? Love the Lord thy God with all your heart and all your soul. And how do you do that? By keeping his commandments. And what's the first commandment? Thou shalt have no other gods before me. What's the next commandment? Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. And thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them, for I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God. And people don't understand that this is Christ. Everything is the Father, man. That was the Father. This is Christ. Or that is in the water underneath. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I am the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children of Israel, the children unto the 3rd and 4th generation of them that hate me. How do you hate the Lord? By not keeping his commandments. This is the major thing that Satan has done since the garden. What was the commandment that the Lord told Adam and Adam told Eve? Don't talk to Satan, which is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That was a commandment. And what did Satan do? You ain't got to listen to him. Listen to me. And that's what we all have been doing ever since. Listening to Satan. And if you're listening to Satan, that means you hate the Lord. It's that simple. Verse 6, but if you love the Lord and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. The law was never done away with, and these laws were not ceased. The animal sacrifice law was ceased. But this is the warning. No other gods, right? Let's go to Matthew 15. We're not supposed to have no other gods, and we're supposed to keep the commandments of God. Let's go look and see Jesus even say this. For those that love to continue to say that we don't have to keep none of them laws, then why is Christ saying this? Matthew 15, verse 1. Then came to Jesus scribes and Pharisees, which were of Jerusalem, saying, why do thy disciples transgress the tradition of the elders? For they wash not their hands when they eat bread. They're trying to figure out, look, why your boys that's with you, they ain't wash their hands. That's our tradition. So then what did Jesus say? But he answered and said unto them, why do ye also transgress the commandment of God by your tradition? So they talk about washing hands. Jesus is like, look, I know you guys. Why y'all, let's read it again. Why do ye transgress the commandment of God by your tradition? What is sin? Transgression of the law. So if you're breaking the law, you are sinning. And if you're breaking the law on purpose, Jesus ain't covering you for that. He's covering for your ignorant sins. These are the things that's not being taught to the people. This is why the books say that Satan fooled the whole entire world. And what is that? Revelation 12. Verse 4. For God commanded. Now remember, this is Jesus saying this. For God commanded, saying, honor thy father and mother, and he that curseth father or mother, let him die the death. Jesus didn't come to get rid of that. But he's about to snap on them. But ye say, whosoever shall say to his mother or his father or his mother, it is a gift by whatsoever thou mightest be profited by me, and honor not his father or his mother, he shall be free. Wait a minute, the law of God say if you dishonor your mother and your father, you should be put to death. But they're saying, and honor not his father and his mother, he shall be free. Thus ye have made the commandment of God of none effect by your tradition. So your tradition, men, is making people break God's commandments. Look at Christ, what he called them in verse 7. Ye hypocrites. Well did Isaiah prophesy of you, saying, this people draw near to me with their mouth and honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. But in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. Their heart is far from Christ, but their lips is always saying, I love the Lord, I love the Lord. But they're teaching the doctrines of the commandments of men and not the commandments of God. Let's go to Exodus 32. So it wants to do this on me now. Go back. All right, there we go. Exodus 32. So even Christ is telling everyone to keep he said it through his whole ministry, people. He said through his whole ministry, keep the commandments of God, but the traditions of men, Pharisees and scribes, that weren't keeping the law. He told them one time, listen, y'all don't even keep the law. Then he told the people, listen to what they tell you, but your righteousness got to exceed over the righteousness of the Pharisees. So if the Pharisees wasn't even keeping the law, what are you supposed to do according to Christ? All right, so let's go to Exodus 32. Let's look at a commandment of men. Soon as we came out of Egypt, let's look at a commandment of men. Exodus 32 verse 1. And when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down out of the mount, the people gathered themselves together unto Aaron and said unto him, Up, make us gods, which shall go before us. For as this Moses, the man that brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we know not what has become of him. And Aaron said unto them, Break off the golden earrings, which are in the ears of your wives and of your sons and of your daughters, and bring them unto me. That's a commandment of a man. Let's keep reading. And all the people brake off the golden earrings which were in their ears, and brought them unto Aaron. And he received them at their hand, and fashioned it with the graven tool, after he had made a molten calf. And they said, These be the gods of Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. So the people then, what did they do? They done talked their priests into doing something totally against the God of Israel, right after the God of Israel told them, don't do this. Don't have no other gods before me, and don't make any graven images. Verse 5. And when Aaron saw it, he built an altar before it. And Aaron made proclamation and said, Tomorrow is the feast of the Lord. But this is the golden calf in front of them. And they rose up early in the morning and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat and to drink and rose up to play. And the Lord said unto Moses, Go, get thee down, for thy people which thou broughtest out of the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. It's no longer about the commandments of God, like Christ said. It's about the commandments of men. Verse 8, they have turned aside quickly out of the way which I command them. They have made them a molten calf and have worshipped it and have sacrificed thereto and said, These be thy gods, O Israel, which have brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. So now they totally turned their back on the Lord and had their own tradition that they made up. Now they did learn this from the Egyptians, but they didn't know what happened to Moses, so they was turning their hearts right back to Egypt. Right back to Egypt. Let's go to Judges 2. A commandment of men. Let's go to Judges 2. Judges 2, let's read verse 11. Now, after we went through all of that, and we started going around and knocking off all of the other nations round about, and the Lord was with us, and Moses and Joshua warned the people and said, listen, you better stick with the Lord. Do not turn to these other gods that are round about you, or the Lord will leave you. But what did Israel do anyway? Turn to these other gods. Let's start reading in Judges verse 11. And the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord and served Baalim. And they forsook the Lord God of their fathers, which brought them out of the land of Egypt, and followed other gods of the people that were round about them, and bowed themselves unto them, and provoked the Lord to anger. This is what you're looking at right now. That's modern day Molech. All the gods that you ever heard, whatever their name is, if it's a male, it's all going to point to one person that we're going to read next. And if it's a female, they all are pointing to one female, which we're going to read next. But what you're looking at, that was in the Colosseum in Rome, that the Vatican put there, that's Molech. We're not supposed to have anything to do with any other god, because that's the same molten calf that came out of Egypt. Ain't nothing new under the sun. But who did the children of Israel start to follow? Verse 13. And they forsook the Lord and served Baal and Ashtaroth. Well, Brother Asa, who's Baal and Ashtaroth? You're looking at an illustration of them. Baal is Nimrod, and Ashtaroth is Semiramis. So the children of Israel started following these two gods. If you're not following the Lord God of Israel, the living God, then you're following something else that has not. There's only two tables. It's either Satan's table or it's the Lord's table. You have the choice to which one you want to sit at. But Baal and Ashtaroth is Semiramis and Nimrod. Let's read about Nimrod in the Bible. You're not going to find Semiramis in the Bible. You got to go to history books to find out. But let's go find out about Nimrod. Genesis 10, we're going to start reading at verse 1. Genesis 10 and verse 1. Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And unto them were sons born after the flood. So after the great flood, and Noah and his 3 sons and Noah's wife and his sons' wives, there was only 8 people that made it off the boat. These are the only 3 that repopulated the earth. Everyone comes from either Shem or Ham or Japheth. You are from one of these 3, because Noah didn't have no more sons. So let's skip down to let's read Japheth real quick. And the sons of Japheth, Gomer and Magog and Madai and Javan and Tubal and Meshesh and Tyrus. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz and Rephath and Togmar. Now, if you continue all the way down, let's go to skip down to verse 5. All right, people. I don't know what it is. It's something about this lesson right here that they are not going to allow me to put it in one lesson. So I'm going to continue to do this. But I got a feeling I need to just make a recording. That's what I think. I think I need to make a recording of this with my camera and then upload it. Because this is what happened on the Sabbath day. It starts getting into some stuff, all of a sudden, low connection. So thank everybody for coming back again. Go ahead and start watch parties again. Like the video, share the video. Let's get back into Genesis. But I swear, I gotta do a recording. Just a straight recording. This is ridiculous. I can't believe this happened. So, as I was saying about Gentiles, in Genesis 10, verse 2, down to 5, Gentiles are Europeans and Asians. All right? They are not the whole entire world. There are dictionaries out here that's wrong. According to the Bible, these people are Gentiles. Hamites, or what we call these days Hamitic Africans, or Ishmaelites, the Arabs, or anybody else, they are not Gentiles. They are their own bloodline. Hamites are Hamites, Ishmaelites are Ishmaelites, and they're Semitic. But there's Hebrews that want to get rid of this. How you going to take away from the book to try to prove that the whole world are Gentiles if they're not Jews? But that's that's not what we're dealing with. I just had to throw that in. Let's skip down to verse 6. We're dealing with Nimrod. And the sons of Ham, Cush, that's the Ethiopians, and Mizraim, that's the Egyptians, and Phut, those are the Libyans, and Canaan, the Canaanites. And the sons of Cush, Sheba, and Havilah, and Sabta, and Ramiah, and Sebichah, the sons of Remah, Sheba, and Dedan. And Cush begot Nimrod, and he began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord, wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel. So what you're looking at is an illustration. All right, it's just an illustration, brothers, of Semiramis and Nimrod. Now Cush begot Nimrod with Nimrod's mother, Semiramis. When Cush died, Nimrod married his wife, his mama, Semiramis. Verse 10 again. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel and Erech and Akkad and Calneh and in the land of Shinar. So he was a king, which made his mama / his wife and his baby mama down at Tammuz, that made her a queen, right? And this was Babel. So that made her a queen, and in the Bible, she is called the Queen of Heaven. All goddesses come from her. People gotta understand that. All goddesses come from Semiramis, and all gods come from Nimrod. They both point to Satan because they're not pointing to God. But he was the first king, and he was the king of Babylon. Let's go to did I read down? No, I read down. Let's go to Genesis 11. Let's just get right on over. Now understand, let's get this in our head. There was one language. Let's see how that language got spread out. Genesis 11 verse 1. And the whole earth was of one language and one speech. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. So all of these people that were as one, remember, Cush was Noah's son. Then Cush had Nimrod. Someone else had Semiramis. So it wasn't a lot of them. But they came from the east. Now this is probably a little bit later on when they got more populated, but they came from the east. But where is Babylon? In modern day Iraq. So that means they came a little bit further east and not Africa. Let's keep reading. And they said to one another, go to and let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone and slime for mortar. And they said, go, let us build us a city and a tower whose top may reach in heaven. And let us make a name that lest we be scattered upon the face of the whole earth. And the Lord came in to see the city and the tower, and what the children of men built it. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they begin to do, and nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined to do. Let us go down, and therefore confound their language, not languages, confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth. And from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth. And that's what this is. This is the kingdom of Nimrod. And as you can see, this is Iraq. The Euphrates River's right here. And that was Nimrod's kingdom. All right? Now, when they started doing everything as one and the Lord came down to scatter them, this is what happened. They scattered into different places. Why did they scatter? Because they didn't understand each other's speech. One person is saying this, another one saying that, and everybody that could understand each other got into their groups and they went separate ways. But before that happened, Semiramis had festivals that she created in the name of Nimrod and Semiramis, aka Ishtar. That's why we read in Genesis 2 that the children of Israel worshipped Baal, aka Nimrod, and Ashtaroth, aka Semiramis or Ishtar. And all of the festivals that went around the world started when they had one. I see Eric Watchman, I don't know, maybe. But they all were doing these festivals anyway. And when the Lord confounded their languages and spread like this in different places, they kept the same festivals under different names. The Hamites went into Africa and stayed in this area where you see Israel. The Semitics went into this area and stayed there. But the Gentiles went not only this way into Europe, but they also went east into Asia. And that's why these festivals are called, they're the same thing under different names. Like I say before, I love this map. This is showing you where everybody went. Now, again, you only see Japheth, Ham, and Shem. And now we're going to see by color where they went. So again, all of the Hamites went into Africa and occupied northeast Africa. All of the Semites went right here in this area and occupied that. But all the Gentiles didn't just go to Europe. I wish people would continue, well, really not continue, but I wish they would start teaching that they also went east. We seem to always focus on Africa, Europe, and the peninsula, but never we talk about the east. Those are Gentiles too. They're Caucasians here and Asians here. That's the spread right after the Tower of Babel. Again, this is where, well, I ain't gonna blow it up. As we see here with Babel, most of the Caucasians came into what we call Europe now. And the Africans went into Africa. But it was called the land of Ham. And they weren't called African. They were called African after the Egyptians gave them that name. I'm sorry, after the Greeks gave them that name. Even the Egyptians weren't called Egyptians. The Semitic tribes came here. This is dispersion right after Babel. But as everyone migrated, again, here's where Babylon would be. And the Africans came into here. Northern part. They didn't come to the southern part. That's another story. Came here. Semites all came here. Arabs, us. Yeah, I ain't gonna say that much about Edomites, but yeah, here. But the Gentiles, this is what verse 5 says, and the isle of the Gentiles. So they not just went into Europe, they occupied all of Asia, and they came over the Bering Strait, which other Hebrews want to get rid of. And they came into North America and came down into South America. This is why all the Aztecs and the Mayans and the Incas look like the northern Native Americans here in America. And they look like the Native Alaskans, which we used to call Eskimos. And they look like the Japanese and the Chinese and the Mongolians. The print is right there on everybody's faces, man. It's right there on everyone's faces. So yes, if you hear any Hebrews talking about, well, these people here in China, they Moabites. No, they not. They're Gentiles. Well, these people here in Africa, in America, they was the Israel. They were the first ones here. No, they not. They're Gentiles. What next? Let's go to Jeremiah 10. Now, because of that whole spread of everybody going everywhere, taking that same doctrine with them of Nimrod and Semiramis and all of the harvest festivals and the winter solstice festivals and the spring festivals, all of these festivals was going on before Israel. Let's go to Jeremiah 10. Because this is why the Lord, I'm in the wrong, okay, there it is. Jeremiah 10, this is exactly why the Lord said this to us. He been told us when we came up out of Egypt. But now he's saying this to Israel. Because the whole world, if they're not Israel, then the Lord called them heathens. Not in a bad way. He's just said that these are the heathens. You are Israel, they are the heathens. Not modern day people want to say you are Israel and all of them are the Gentiles. We just killed that with Genesis 10. So what did the Lord say about the heathens? Verse 1. Hear ye the word which the Lord speaketh unto you, O house of Israel. Thus saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen. And be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them. And I'm only going to read the first part of verse 3. I'm not reading the rest, trying to get into it. For the customs of the people are vain. So the customs that the heathen have been doing since Semiramis and Nimrod are for nothing. Because they do not pay homage to God. They pay homage to other gods and goddesses, which all lead right back to Babylon. This is what thus saith the Lord. So we're going to look now at some goddesses. And remember, they all go back to Semiramis, who started this whole thing from the beginning. Oh yeah, and that's the other thing. Semiramis is the moon god. So anything associated with the moon god, it's about Semiramis. Anything that's associated with the sun god, it's about Nimrod. Of course, again, they're all about Satan, but it's split up. Oh, and the earth too. Let me also say the earth is also Semiramis. The moon and the earth is Semiramis, which is Astaroth, and the sun god, which is Baal, is all about Nimrod. So this is one of her first names. This is also a movie, but this is one of her first names. She was considered the queen of heaven. Her name is Inanna or Inanna, one of the two. This is what the Sumerians called her. All right. The Sumerians, hate to break this down to y'all, some of y'all Kemetic brothers, was before the Egyptians. And they weren't even in the land of Egypt. Sumerians already, they kept the tradition, and the Egyptians kept it on after that. But Semiramis was called Inanna, the Queen of Heaven. And that's actually a movie. Here's a sculpture of her. Remember, we're not supposed to keep idols? Well, this is what Semiramis had put together. Everything, and this is what I could never understand either. If the Lord saved Noah and his sons' wives and his wife, this means Semiramis came from one of them. All right? Because remember, after that, she had Nimrod. So she done heard the stories from her father and her grandfather. She done heard it from her mother, father, grandfather, and grandmother, what God did. But then she turns around and makes herself a goddess and makes her son and also her grandson, which is still her son, Tammuz, gods. But this is her. This is Sumerian artifact. This is also Inanna. Hold on, I got to get to my notes. I think she's also called Oshan. So let me get to my other notes here. I almost forgot about them. This is the stuff that we've been dealing with since the flood. And this is why the Lord had told us, don't learn the way of the heathen. So yes, the Sumerians, Inanna, also Ashnan, who is the grain goddess. And also her name is Demika, the earth mother. All right. Now, for those that are close to my age or maybe older, do y'all remember that Parquet commercial, that butter? It's not nice to fool Mother Nature. And we continue to this day to talk about when the weather gets bad, ooh, Mother Nature going off. No, that ain't Mother Nature. That's the Lord doing that. But all of this goddess stuff, we've been continuing this thing. This is her again. Most of you have seen this picture and you have associated with Ishtar. Well, guess who Ishtar is? Semiramis. Another Sumerian artifact. Let's get to the Egyptians. This is Isis or Ina. Notice she has the same bull horns that we saw earlier and the sun between the bull horns. So she's submitting herself to her son, which S-U-N, which is her head, which would have been her husband. But that's Isis. And she has the sun god above her. Here's Isis again with the same artifact. All of this again is pointing right back to Semiramis, the Queen of Heaven. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show how this goes around the world. Around the world, around the world, around the world, around the world. No? Okay, well. Okay, how about this one? All around the world, same song. No? Well, y'all know about that one anyway. This is Isis. Let's keep going. These are the Greek gods. All right? Where'd my little pointer go? These are the Greek gods. Now, as you can see here, here's Hera. Hera was Zeus's wife, so she's the queen, right? But look over here at Demeter. She's got harvest and a sickle. This is when they started making different gods. You got the main god. I think Demeter was still considered the main god, but there were demigods too. Demigods a little bit lower than the other gods. So what did the Greeks call her? The grain goddess, the goddess of grain, Demeter. So I guess Hera would have been Mother Nature too. So they called her Demeter. And this statue here is what the Romans and the Greeks called her. They called her Ceres. And a lot of you have probably heard of Ceres before. Sounds familiar, like cereal? That's where the word cereal comes from the goddess Ceres. Cereal made out of oats, grains. This is Ceres in the Vatican. So my question is, why, if the Vatican is supposed to be the most holiest place, why are there idols of other gods in that place? That should tell you something. Lord be throwing a lot of hints out here that people just overlook. Here's Ceres again. Notice in this hand, it's money. It's a money bag. And this hand is actually wheat. It's grain. All right? Let's look at this picture some more. There you go. You see it again. Right here is the money. And over here is the grain, the wheat, the harvest. Here's a bigger picture. Here, let me blow it up. Yeah. Here's a bigger picture of this idol. All right. Again, the money bag and the grain. And that's where she's at. She's sitting right on top of the Chicago Board of Trade building here in Chicago. That's the goddess Ceres. About grain, about money exchange, because grain is money exchange. Right on top of the Chicago Board of Trade building. Here she is again at night. Yeah, they light her up sometimes. But that's a statue, that's an idol of the goddess Ceres. That's what the Romans called her. Yeah, she's also at the New York Stock Exchange. I never realized that. The more and more I looked at it, I was like, that? And then I found out that Ceres right up here. See if I can blow it. That Ceres. So now when you go in the buildings, look up and see if there's any statues up there. Oh, I forgot again. All right, kiddies. Sorry about this, parents. This is Series 2. This is a painting of Ceres that's at the Chicago Board of Trade building in the courtway. Notice again the grain and the money. And this is the actual picture of her out in the... Let me see if I can blow this up. This is an actual picture of the courtyard. Now, if you can see, look down here. That's a bull. So you got Ceres, and then you got the bull. The same molten calf. Now, if you couldn't see the bull, there it is now. Right there. So we got the bull, and we got the goddess Ceres up here. We got the bull down here. Symbolism is everywhere, but no one's looking at it. Here's the Chicago Board. Let me blow this up too, so you can see. See where it says Chicago Board of Trade right there? Okay, so we got two statues here of Ceres again. This is the same goddess of grain, earth mother, agriculture. Let's look closely at these two statues. Let's start with this one. you can see this is a part of a boat. That's an anchor. And this is an industrial wheel. That's an anchor too. I'm sorry, that's an anvil. That's right. That's the anchor of the boat. That's the anvil. And that's an industrial wheel. Okay? Now let's look at the other one. Remember, this is the goddess of grain and harvest. Let's look at the other statue of Ceres. What do you see? You got the harvest here, but you got a cornucopia. Why in the world is this woman holding a cornucopia? Well, some of y'all are like, well, what is cornucopia? You see this every Thanksgiving. Screw the turkey, screw all the rest of the stuff. This woman, which is a goddess, not the God of Israel, is holding a cornucopia. Let's look at what the cornucopia was actually used for. This is the cornucopia. The story goes, now again, there's been stories that it was Zeus, and then there's stories that it was actually Hercules. The one I've read on was actually Zeus. This woman here, her name is Almethea, and she's feeding Zeus from her horn. The story is that Almethea was really a goat, and she broke off her horn to feed Zeus because she was Zeus's babysitter. Well, why was she Zeus's babysitter? Because Kronos, Zeus's father, was trying to kill him. Kronos was actually afraid that Zeus was going to grow up and kill him like Kronos killed his father to be the king of the gods. That's Greek mythology. Now, the other story is the other way, that was actually feeding Hercules, because they were afraid that Zeus was trying to kill him. Either way it goes, that's a cornucopia. And Ceres was holding that thing. And the cornucopia is a symbol of Thanksgiving. Let's read this real quick. Cornucopia is the most common symbol of a harvest festival. A horn-shaped container, it is filled with abundance of the earth's harvest. It is also known as the horn of plenty. The traditional cornucopia was a curved goat's horn filled to the brim with fruits and grains. According to Greek legend, Almethea, a goat, broke one of her horns and offered it to Greek god Zeus. As a sign of reverence and as a sign of gratitude, Zeus later set the goat's image in the sky, also known as the constellation Capricorn. Oh, that's something else Israelites love to talk about, but don't, love to fight over. The Greek gods are the ones that set up all of these astrological signs that y'all love to claim. I'm sorry, I ain't gonna say y'all. That we love to claim. Oh, Brother Azza, what's your sign, man? I don't claim that. Because every single one of them signs is dealing with another God. And let's understand something, people. Everything I'm talking about, you have the choice to do. You're not forced to do this stuff. You have a choice to do it. So you can do it if you want to. Hey, I'm just putting the information. I'm blowing the horn. Not the cornucopia horn. But I'm just trying to warn the people. No matter how many people get upset with me, I'm just trying to warn the people. And hopefully there's people who don't know this that can change and serve the Lord God of Israel. That's all I'm trying to do. But that cornucopia is a sign of thanksgiving. That's what it is, people. You cannot get around this. Now, if you still want to meet with people and have dinner and all that, like I said, I ain't got no problem with that. But if you're sitting up and you're saying Happy Thanksgiving, you are now giving homage to Ceres, and not just Ceres, other gods too. And like I said, I love my people. But I understand why we are in the situations we are in, because we done got fooled with a whole bunch of stuff. I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. Thanksgiving is the most camouflaged holiday out of all of them. When it comes to Christmas and Easter, it's under the name of Jesus. We can go to history books and figure that out real quick. We go to the Bible and be like, Jesus' birthday ain't nowhere in here. And Jesus never showed, and we can show in the Bible when Jesus died and when Jesus actually rose from the grave. But when it comes to Thanksgiving, we have no clue. That's why the Lord is allowing his servants now with this great awakening to show to his messengers. He's telling the people. But there's people that want to kick and scream, and you can do that if you want to. I don't care. I'm doing my job. I'm doing what the Lord wants me to do, regardless of what you think of me. But if you're going to a Thanksgiving dinner, it's paying homage to another God, a goddess. I wonder who put all this together. Y'all look closely at that issue. I really wonder who put all this stuff together and kept it the way it is all these years. Because believe me, with everything that you guys just watched when it comes to the Chicago Board of Trade and the New York Stock Exchange, I got other stuff too I didn't put in here. There's a building in England and confirmed. There's a building, the corn, I think it's called the Corn Mother Building. And it's got Siri sitting on top of it. But I wonder who set all this up. And speaking of England, so in England, this same Earth Mother that goes back to goes back to Semiramis, her name by the Celtics was called Britannia. So this is Britannia right here. This is a symbol of Semiramis. In England, it's called Lammas, the Harvest Festival, celebrating the fruits of the first harvest. I'm just trying to show how this stuff is worldwide, because I used to kick against Thanksgiving because I said it ain't a worldwide thing. Christmas is worldwide, Easter is worldwide, St. Valentine's Day, I don't know if that's really worldwide, but it's mainly in the West. Yeah, Eric, you said it. Only time I ever see that wreath is when Thanksgiving's coming around. And there's another type of wreath that's all green and red when it comes to Christmas. But this wreath is straight up Thanksgiving. But in England, it's called Lammas. Same thing. I'm just trying to show how this is a worldwide thing. And for those that's, if you are sitting down with your loved one and watching this, this isn't to condemn you or to make you feel bad or anything. This is to just show you what we have been doing. And why the Lord is upset with not just Israel, but just the world. Because everybody is following Baal and Ashtaroth. This is the Viking Norse goddess Freya. Where have we heard the word Freya before? We say it every Friday because that's what Friday is named after, Freya. So when it comes to the days of the week for you naysayers that's getting ready to say stuff like Yeah, we serve other gods all the time, knowingly enough. Listen, we can't help but say the word Friday. Because if you go to your job and tell them, you can't even say the months of the year, because that's named after gods too, right? So if you go to your job and tell them, I need the fourth month on the 10th day off from work, they're going to be like, what? Huh? Because we served other gods before, the Lord is forcing us to do some things. So you're going to have to straight up tell somebody, I need April 10th off. What day is April 10th on? Oh, it's on a Friday. I've had everything hit at me. I had everything hit at me. And the Lord just kept me here and got me stronger and made me research and go through the book and counteract all of these things that people always want to say. Now it's going to be about my character. I already know. I don't even care. But that's freer. That's free again. That's also Freya, riding her boar. That's the Norse goddess Freya, Mother Nature, Semiramis. The Indonesians, now this isn't her, but the Indonesians also called, because what I just did is we went west. We went into Europe, all right? Now we're going to go east when the Gentiles started going east. So in Indonesia, her name is Poninonga. I hope I said that right. Poninongoga, or something like that. But this isn't her. This is a Hindu goddess, Devi, or Diva. So all of my sisters that like to call themselves a diva, this is who you're paying homage to, and you don't even know it. Ignorance kills too. Maybe this is why the Lord is sending his people to warn folks so they can turn from these ways. See that tongue sticking out? How many of y'all sisters do that still when you take a picture? This stuff was handed to us through entertainment, through artists, through music and songs and videos. Because they thought it was either cool or they decided, yeah, I like this goddess. This is, let me see, this is Lakshmi with all the arms. This is a Hindu goddess, Lakshmi. Now we've seen, I'm not going to say a name, but we've seen one artist do both of these things. And I hope she repents, just like all the other artists that do things. It's hard for me to condemn a lot of them because I was in that entertainment industry before, and I know what you got to do to get ahead, and I ain't want to do nothing. But some of them do it, and then when they figure out they're too far ahead in the game to turn around, especially when it comes to their finances, they stay with it. So I just want to let everybody know we got to pray for our brothers and sisters who are caught up into something that they know is wrong, but they got to keep doing it because their life could be in danger too. But that's Lakshmi. This is Saraswati. She deals with music. There she go with all them hands again. Let's keep it moving quickly. This is also Saraswati. Now, notice all the gold coins. Notice all the money. How many of you done went to the casino and seen this before? It's all around us. All the symbolisms and everything about these different goddesses and gods is all around us. I'm not telling you you can't go gambling no more. You will do what you want to do. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying this is the goddess that points back to Semiramis. Because as everyone spread around the world, they took the name and they took different names and they served the same God in different names. So now that we go from Asia, we cross over the Bering Strait, right? We cross over the Bering Strait into Alaska, like I showed before, and then we come down into what we now call America. And guess who she's called here in America? She's the Corn Mother. This is what the Native Americans called her, the Corn Mother. Here she is again. I'm just trying to show everybody who we may be serving on this day by saying Happy Thanksgiving. Having a family get together, that's nothing wrong with that. I don't, like I said, but soon as Thanksgiving is thrown into it, I've already shown that cornucopia and the harvest God it belonged to. But the Corn Mother has a harvest as well. Here's one of her little idols. Here is a picture. I think it's in Oklahoma. But here's a statue of the Corn Mother. And I'm going to tell you her name in a second. It's another statue. I need to look this up again and find out where it is next time I do this. But this is a statue of the Native Americans' Corn Mother goddess. And her name is Selu. This book is called Selu, Seeking the Corn Mother's Wisdom. But what I want you guys to do is check out the top of the book. Now, you may not be able to see that, but I'll read it for you. A book so wise and true, it might have been written by Selu herself, and perhaps it was. Who endorsed this book with that? The author of The Color Purple. The author of The Color Purple believes in the Corn Mother Selu here in Americas. What else was her name? Oh, I'm sorry. No. That's Selu. That's the Corn Mother. Now, as we continue to go south from North America into Central America, we have now Chico Micolta. The Aztecs called her Chico Micolta. And I hope my brothers are watching, because we just, man, we watched the video. These Hebrews, they broke down exactly who the Native Americans are. They come, I'm going to get that together, and I'm going to put something together myself. But they prove without a doubt that the Native Americans are not Israelites. The very thing that I'm showing you, they said the same thing. They Asians. They're Gentiles. How is it? I'm going to say this part. How is it that the Chinese, most of the Chinese, or Mongolians too, could come all the way over to South America and be able to translate the Mayans' words, the Mayans and the Mayans and the Incas? How were they able to do that? And they from the other side of the world, because hey, they migrated, and once they figured out the new land, they was coming here too. But don't nobody want to talk about that. Don't nobody want to talk about that. But this chick right here is called Chico blah 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 blah. Her name is Chico Micolta. Here she is again. This is the indigenous people of the Americas. This here, the Mayans and the Incas called her Pachamama. This is just a painting. But again, this is the Earth Mother, right? This is Mother Nature, right? So this is the Mayans and the Incas called her Pachamama. And here's an actual picture, or whatchamacallit, of Pachamama. Does she look African at all? Harvest festivals are traditionally held on or near the Sunday of the harvest moon. This is the full moon that occurs closest to autumn equinox. You can read about all of that on this website called Project Britain, because the Church of England started Lammas that we talked about earlier. This is what we're supposed to be dealing with. Again, I have no problems with people that want to get together, because again, they only allow us to have certain days off where we can come together. But brothers and sisters, while you're at these places, try your best to evangelize somehow. Try your best to tell the people, listen, I know what we're doing here, but I'm here to try to help or whatever. And show them, because again, people like to say, well, you're taking this off the table. What you going to replace it with? With God's feast days. God has his own feast days that people don't want to deal with. People want to continue to say, well, the law is no more, but then turn around and keep Christmas and Easter. Because Satan ain't no joke. These are the wiles of the devil. Let's go to Leviticus 23. I'm trying to find my other notes. Where did they go? Let's go to Leviticus 23. All right. Because what we're seeing here is the replacement. And it wasn't even a replacement. This is what we should have been doing from the beginning, but we didn't. We replaced God's feast days with the world's feast days. And this is why the Lord said, don't learn the way of the heathen. So let's read the Lord's harvest festival. Leviticus 23 verse 1. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them concerning the feast of the Lord, which they proclaim to be holy convocations, even these are my feasts. So these are the Lord's feasts. So if the Lord is the controller and controls everything in the world, and he runs the world, what's in the prayer again? Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. So when heaven comes, these feast days are going to be the dominant, and all this other stuff that we have is not. But what's the Lord's harvest feast day? Let's go down to verse 33. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speaking to the children of Israel, saying, in the 15th day. Now I want y'all to remember this, because we're going to look at something else that happened. Speaking to the children of Israel, saying, in the 15th day of the 7th month shall be the feast of tabernacles for 7 days unto the Lord. And on the first day shall be a holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein. 7 days ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. On the 8th day shall be a holy convocation unto you. And ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. It is a solemn assembly. And ye shall do no servile work therein. Now, we don't keep the animal sacrifices any longer. That was put to cease. All right? But we're still supposed to keep God's holy days. So when does the Feast of Tabernacles happen? It actually happens at the end of summer. let's go. Yeah, let's do that. Let's go to Genesis 8 real quick. We're gonna hit two things because I said this before, and then people was hitting me and asking me, "What do you mean there's no 4 seasons?" There's only 2 seasons. Autumn, which I forgot to read, one of the goddesses that the Romans called was also, her name was Autumnus. And that's where we got the word autumn from, or fall. So in Genesis 8, let's read verse 22. While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, hot and heat, cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. Notice how I said summer and winter. Notice how there's two different things. You got seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night. It said nothing about spring. It said nothing about fall. Let's go to Psalm 74 real quick. Because I just want to point out to people that the Lord is only dealing with summer and winter. Man's dealing with spring, summer, winter, and fall. Psalms 74. And we're going to read one verse. Where is it at? 7. Nah, I think I wrote it down. No, it's 17. That's right. Thou hast set all the borders of the earth. Thou hast made summer and winter. Summer and winter. So when does summer actually start? In the first month of Abib. When is the first month of Abib? On the Roman calendar that we have today, it always starts somewhere in March or somewhere in April. All right. Then 6 months later, in the 7th month, starts winter. What kicks off the 7th month? The first new moon, and this is for people that got understanding. The first new moon, which is called the memorial of the blowing of trumpets. That day starts the first day of winter. And then the new moon in what we call spring starts the first day of summer. So these harvest festivals that we have, they come in wintertime, but we call it fall. It's when summer is over with is when these festivals come along. So that feast, the Leviticus 23 that we read, that's the 7th month, which is the wintertime now, in the 15th day, right? So those that know, in the 7th month, in the 15th day, starts, I'm trying to find this. Okay. The 15th day in the 7th month, that actually is what starts the Feast of Tabernacles. So let's do some reading. Let's do some reading. Let's go to 1 Kings 12. Now remember, what we read was God's commandments. What did Christ say again? If you want eternal life, keep the commandments. What do we read at the top of this whole lesson? What did the saints have to do? Keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. And again, Jesus said, keep the commandments. So we just read in the feast where the Lord said, keep the Feast of Tabernacles for 7 days. Then on the 8th day, have another solemn assembly. And all that took place in the 7th month, starting on the 15th day. But what we're about to read is when the kingdom of Israel split into two. And you had the kingdom of Judah, and you had the kingdom of Israel. Let's look at what the king of Israel did. 1 Kings 12, verse 26. Now Jeroboam said in his heart, Now shall the kingdom return into the house of David. If this people go up to do sacrifice unto the Lord, unto the house of the Lord at Jerusalem, then shall the heart of this people turn again unto their Lord, even unto Rehoboam, king of Judah. And they shall kill me, and go again to Rehoboam, king of Judah. So Jeroboam was afraid. He was scared. Even though the Lord gave him the kingdom, half the kingdom, really the majority, but gave him the kingdom, he was scared that everyone in his kingdom would eventually leave and go back south to the kingdom of Judah. So then what did he do? Verse 28. Whereupon the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold. Come on, man. You mean to tell me he did the same thing the forefathers did and he knew about this? Whereupon the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold and said unto them, It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem? Behold thy gods, O Israel, that brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. So he's like, is it too much for y'all to go to Jerusalem? Because he was afraid once they go back to Jerusalem, they may not come back. So he built 2 golden calves and actually said, Behold thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. And he set the one in Bethel, and the other he put in Dan. And this thing became a sin, for the people went to worship before one, even unto Dan. And he made an house of high places, and made priests of the lowest of the people, which were not of the sons of Levi. So he got 2 calves. He got priests that's not even from the sons of Levi. And Jeroboam ordained a feast in the 8th month, on the 15th day of the 8th month. Wait a minute, the Lord's feast is on the 7th month. So he took it upon himself to wait a month later on the 15th day of the 8th month, like unto the feast that is in Judah, and he offered upon the altar. So did he in Bethel, sacrificing unto the calves that he had made. And he placed in Bethel the priests of the high places which he had made. And he offered upon the altar which he had made in Bethel the 15th day of the 8th month, even in the month which he had devised of his own heart, and ordained a feast unto the children of Israel, and he offered upon the offer a burnt incense. This dude totally turned his back on the Lord. He was so afraid that he might die because the Lord gave him this kingdom. And he was so afraid the people would kill him and go back to Judah that he decided to turn to the goddess. Why am I saying that goddess? Because even unto this day, when is the Lord's feast days? It was a month ago. Does that ring anybody's bell now? This ain't nothing new under the sun. Nothing is new under the sun. I'm sorry. But it wasn't exactly a month ago. It's been about a month ago, over a month ago. And this is what the Lord had a problem with. And he probably still got a problem now. The Lord is the one that told us we gonna be serving other gods because we turned away from him. This is the warning I'm trying to get people to understand too. I love my people. I'm not about to sit up here and try to make it easy for them. I'm trying to let you know this day serves another goddess. Let's watch this film.
Thanksgiving is a unique American holiday. And what comes to mind when you think of Thanksgiving? We think of family and friends gathered around the table having a good meal and giving thanks for all of our blessings. And watching sports on TV. Football, basketball. Ah yes, a favorite American pastime. And of course, those images which were given to us in elementary school of Indians and pilgrims celebrating the harvest. Etymology, the history of a linguistic form shown by tracing its development since its earliest recorded occurrence in the language where it is found.
Now let's remember, this is an old film. She's going to say November 23rd.
Today, November 23rd is Thanksgiving. And because we've all heard the happy Pilgrim and Indian story, I thought it would be appropriate to share a less heard tale, the true story of Thanksgiving. Most Americans today believe that Thanksgiving celebrates a harvest, but the real legacy of the Pilgrim Fathers includes treachery and terror as well. In 1637, near present-day Groton, Connecticut, over 700 men, women, and children of the Pequot tribe had gathered for their annual Green Corn Festival, which is our Thanksgiving celebration. In the pre-dawn hours, the sleeping Indians were surrounded by English and Dutch mercenaries who shot or clubbed them to death, while the terrified women and children who huddled inside the longhouse were burned alive. The next day, the governor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony declared a day of Thanksgiving because 700 unarmed men, women, and children had been murdered. Even the friendly Wampanoag didn't see the madness. The killings became more and more frenzied, with days of Thanksgiving feasts being held after each successful massacre. George Washington finally suggested that only one day of Thanksgiving per year be set aside, and Abraham Lincoln later declared Thanksgiving Day to be a legal national holiday during the Civil War.
The Puritans who conducted this war profited greatly from its outcome. They seized land, they became rich through wampum and wampum tribute, they sold Pequot captives. Many of them became wealthy men as a result of this conquest.
I estimate there was about 4,000 Pequots before the war. About 1,500 were killed or captured during the war. 300 or 400 or 600 at Mystic, and then several hundred during the ensuing 2 or 3 months. The majority of the tribes survived. Many of them sought safety with friends and allies at Quinnipiac, Long Island, Connecticut, Narragansett, Mohegans, some various Nipmuc groups, and a very few, perhaps no more than a dozen, were actually sold into slavery in the Caribbean. And I suspect that several hundred Pequots eventually ended up in Massachusetts Bay, Plymouth, and Connecticut colony as virtual slaves.
Captain John Mason was the soldier who led the attack on the Pequot Indians. John Mason was born in England in 1600. After serving in the Netherlands under Sir Thomas Fairfax, he came to Dorchester, Massachusetts in 1630. In 1637, Mason was commissioned by the General Court of Connecticut to lead the attack on the Pequot Indians.
Captain John Mason was given numerous land grants and was awarded the prestigious rank of Major for his military success in the Pequot War.
Up until about 10-15 years ago, Mason was largely regarded as being a hero. I think what the Pequots have succeeded in doing is kind of not necessarily rewriting history, but challenging our perception of it. And I think that's a very valuable thing. I think too often we tend to accept the picture that's come down to us as being the truth.
To remember John Mason as just an Indian killer, I think does disservice to what he did for the rest of his life as guardian of the Mohegan tribe.
In his own words, John Mason formerly stated, in a letter to the General Court, "I shall not climb after applause, nor do I much fear a censure. I desire that my name be sparingly mentioned. My principal aim is that God may have his due praise. Signed, your unworthy servant, John Mason." I feel that this speaks volumes about the character of John Mason, and I'm very proud to be a descendant of this exemplary leader.
John Mason enjoyed going into battle. He enjoyed killing people. He enjoyed the blood and the guts. To have the settlers 200 years later or so erect a statue to a pig like John Mason would be unbelievable that they could do that.
But the thing that was dangerous about John Mason to me was that the fire that he had in his heart was the more dangerous than the fire he had in his hand. Because the fire he had in his heart was a fire of hatred that was fueled by bigotry, greed, and intolerance. And unfortunately, that fire still burns today.
Now, here's the thing about this. The reason I played this one, because, you know, there are also people who say I don't celebrate Thanksgiving because of the massacre that happened to the Native Americans, who are Gentiles, not Israelites. All right? And hey, that's choice, no problem. I personally, like I said, I'm trying to show that this day is also serving another God. It's put out there for the corn mother Selu, and also Ceres. All right. But for those that are saying also that it's because I'm not doing it because it's massacring, it was a day of massacre. It wasn't a day of massacre, but it was used. Thanksgiving was used, like you just saw in the video. You just saw in the video that every time they killed a small tribe of Indians, that they would massacre them. All right? And then George Washington said, you know, we shouldn't be doing this every time we massacre people. It wasn't like he said we should stop massacring people. He said we should only have this once a year. And then 15 presidents later, you know, we just saw that Lincoln made it a national holiday. So you got two things when it comes to this. One, massacring of other people, and two, it's about the harvest goddess Ceres from the Roman perspective, and also Selu, the corn mother, from the Indians' perspective. But when it comes to this massacre, I don't want Israel to get too high and mighty about themselves. You weren't expecting this, was you? What is that right there? That's a buffalo soldier. So for all my Israelites, I got to check us too. When we get to talk about the white man did this and white man did that, in this case, you a white man. Let's do some reading. The Buffalo Soldiers. These were all black soldiers that came about the Civil War to help get rid of the Native Americans. After the Civil War, U.S. policy was brought forcefully home to Native Americans on the bayonets of U.S. infantry and cavalry regiments assigned to the frontier. For the first time officially, this included black men. This included you too, Israel. The 9th and 10th Cavalry and the 24th and the 25th Infantry Regiments, U.S. colored troops. There is a painful irony that these intrepid black soldiers took part in the final defeat of Native Americans. What? The first victims of racism in the Americas. I can't go with that part. But take part they did, and proudly, in the last Indian wars, because their short curly hair was similar to that of buffaloes' necks. Indians called them buffalo soldiers, and the name stuck. This is why the Native Americans, who were Gentiles, who were not Israelites, who had long straight hair just like the Gentiles out of Europe, they are the ones that gave us the name buffalo soldiers. Let's keep reading. They moved Indian families and nations from one location to another and rode after those who left reservations. This is what Israel was doing, to seek some freedom, or merely for forage, for food, for starving people. From the Canadian border to the Rio Grande, wow, the whole United States frontier. From St. Louis to the Rockies and into California, the Buffalo Soldiers rolled up an impressive record. In 1890, the black troopers were summoned to assist the suppression of the last Indian uprising, the Ghost Dance Rebellion. Really a Sioux religious revival and prayer for survival, it managed to terrify local whites. The U.S. Army command ordered in its troops after surrounding 350 Sioux at Wounded Knee. The 7th Cavalry opened fire on innocent men, women, and children. And one of the 50 survivors of the massacre recalled, "We tried to run, but they shot us like we were buffalo." Black troops were not involved in the slaughter, but the 9th Cavalry had been assigned to herding the ghost dancers together. To celebrate their part in the action, a 9th cavalryman wrote a ballad that ended with the lines, and I didn't get all of that part. The Redskins heard the 9th in the rear. One more page. And in an age that offered black men few dissent, manly jobs, military life appealed to those recruits. Don't that sound familiar today, people? Many had served their country during Civil War. There is little evidence that these men disagreed with their government's genocidal policies towards Native Americans, and they certainly carried out their orders. So if the Native Americans are supposedly one of the tribes of Israel, why would brothers kill brothers? And I have in another lesson where there was actually Native Americans who kept us as slaves. But that's not the part I'm trying to deal with. What I'm dealing with is when you say, I'm not doing this because of the slaughtering of the Indians, let's just remember, you helped them, Israel. We got repentance to do too, besides worshiping other gods. Totally besides worshiping other gods. So y'all enjoy your, how do people say it? Enjoy your holiday. That kills me now. It'd be funny because I'll be out and I'll be working and people always tell me, they'd be like, yeah, enjoy your holiday. And I'll be like, it ain't my holiday. So for those that celebrate it, you enjoy your holiday. It's your choice. You can do what you want to do. All right? But as for me and my house, I'm serving the Lord. Now, if I choose to go someplace, and if you choose to go someplace, all I'm saying is try to draw somebody out. All right? I'm not even going to read the food thing because most of y'all done ate already. I'll do that for the Christmas special. I won't even do the food thing because I'm quite sure most of y'all done did it already. But try your hardest to if you go to these dinners for holidays, just try to draw somebody out. Show them that it's wrong. Be a light. All right. And if you think that I'm just, some people thinking, oh, you jumping on it. No, this is awakening, man. The Lord wants us to turn back to him. How are we going to turn? Matter of fact, let me read. The Lord wants us to turn back to him. But how are we going to do that if we keep our mouth shut about certain things? Because, there's brothers talking about you need to be concerned about your own sins and all of that stuff. And you're not concerned about what people doing on holidays and stuff. And I'm sitting here like, wait a minute. Everybody dealing with their own sins, but we all supposed to help each other. So if there's something that someone can see that has us serving another God, what are we not supposed to do? We not supposed to say nothing about it? Like, we can go hard when it comes to Christmas, and I see all these brothers doing that. When Christmas, look, starting tomorrow, these same brothers that got a problem with me saying stuff about Thanksgiving gonna be totally on it with Christmas. And when Easter come around, they're gonna be totally on it with Easter. But for some reason, Israel still want to serve this goddess right here. But I'm gonna read this. Let's go to Revelation 12. Verse 9. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent, called the devil and Satan, who deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So if Satan has deceived the whole world, anything that ain't got nothing to do with the Lord's holidays is of Satan. Now, let me put this in perspective for all of the naysayers that want to be like, well, what about Purim? What about Feast of Dedication? Are those civil holidays within Israel serving another God? That's the question. Is Purim serving another God? No, it's not. So there's nothing wrong with it because the Lord put it in the Bible. Is the Feast of Dedication serving another God? No, it is not, because the Lord went to the Feast of Dedication. Now, when it comes to the Apocrypha, I'm just going to be real with y'all. Hey, I ain't too sure about that version of Feast of Dedication, but when you go to Ezra 6, there was a Feast of Dedication for the temple when they rebuilt it. So I'll roll with that. But neither one is serving another God. So when it comes to these days that we think the civil one is man-made holidays, stop trying to use God's days or whatever's in the Bible to say you can't say nothing about this day. You can't do that. You do it all you want to. But a lot of y'all look kind of silly. All right? And I'm going to just say it like it is. You want to use Purim and you want to use Feast of Dedication to shut people up about Thanksgiving, man, y'all better turn from y'all wicked ways. I thank y'all for watching. Please share the video. I might try to have to put this together or just make a recording and then put it all up as one. Sorry about the interruption. Thank y'all for watching. See y'all on the Sabbath day. All glory to the Father in the mighty name of Jesus.
Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake.